Before the video begins, I would like to mention that if you find this to be too long, you can always skip certain sections by using the timestamps below. This will not only teach you everything about the build, but also variants, whilst including a step-by-step on how to learn it as well. For the full build guide, check the pinned comment under the video or the description. Enjoy. Welcome to Soulbeast class. Let's start from your build. Do you have a build already? Yes, okay. Your build should be full berserker everything. And then you should have force and impact sigils on both your longbow and your double axes. Yeah, as far as your traits go, you run Beastmastery 333, Skirmishing 133, and Soulbeast 223. Let's get into the traits. Also, come over here. Why are you so far away? It's because I told you to go there, I think, maybe. Alright. Let's start from Beastmastery. First trait. Pack Alpha. Your pet attributes are improved and pet skills gain reduced recharge. Well, recharge reduction. So you get 150 of every stat. Well, your pet does, but you do because Soulbeast. I'm kind of skipping ahead here. Resounding Timber. Commands apply additional boons around you and gain reduced recharge. Loud Whistle. While your health is above the threshold, your pet deals increased strike damage. Your pet swap gains recharge reduction. Wow, so many pet-related things. This Traitline is amazing. I love pets. Natural Healing. Your pet recovers health each interval. Pet Prowess. Your pet moves faster and deals more damage on critical hits. Honed Axes. You and your pet gain ferocity. Axe skills gain reduce recharge, and you gain additional ferocity while wielding an axe. So this is Beastmastery. This is the pet Traitline, but all of the things that you're reading here, all the things that you're seeing here, are things that we are actually going to get ourselves the moment we merge with the pet by using the Soulbeast mechanic, which is the F5 by default. So all these things, wow, you gain, your pet gains health. Wow, that's useless. Oh wow, your pet gives itself additional boons. Wow, that's completely shit, right? Are things that we are actually going to get ourselves because of Soulbeast. So that is very nice, actually. This also means that yes, we do get 150 extra toughness, which is a little bit annoying in some fights because obviously a lot of raid bosses are aggroed on toughness. So if you don't have a tank that has a higher toughness than 150, or well, 1150, you are going to be tanking. And it's like, oh, that's bad because I'm a DPS class. Not really. The problem with tanking isn't that you're a DPS class. The problem with tanking is the next Traitline, Skirmishing. Tailwind, gain swiftness when swapping weapons in combat. So that's very nice for free swiftness uptime. Second trait, Sharpen Edges. You and your pet having a chance to cause bleeding on critical hits. Now, this is just a very nice free damage increase. But yeah, the other trait you can take is Trust Expertise. This would only be worth taking if it allows you to place another trap in the phase of an encounter. Yes, yeah, okay. Well, there you go. Amazing. Perfect. Next trait, Furious Grip. Gain Fury when swapping weapons in combat. This is, again, just like the Swiftness trait. It's just a nice free boon that you give yourself. Hidden Barbs. So now we're getting to the weird zone of the Power Soulbeast build. The weird zone is that Hidden Barbs is a condi damage trait, but it's also kind of the only trait we can take. The other two, one of them is Spotter. It gives your allies Fury for 3 seconds every 10 seconds. This is honestly just completely useless. It used to give Precision before they reworked basically the entire game. The other trait is worthless as well, because we don't even use Sword, so we don't even get the value from that cooldown reduction. This gives you increased bleeding damage. We've seen before that whenever you crit, you have a 33% chance of applying bleeding. So whenever you do crit and the bleeding does actually happen, now that bleeding does 33% extra damage, right? So it's kind of cool. You know, the bleeding damage gets increased. We're playing a power build, so now we're kind of turning into some kind of power damage hybrid thing. And as you can see on your axe skills, on axe 2 and 3, those also apply bleeding themselves. So now you're applying a lot of bleeding. There's an interaction between sharpened edges, hidden barbs, and Axemane, and lets you apply a stupid amount of bleeding for free, right? And now we get to like the power side of the trait line, I guess, with Autoattacks. The next trait, you deal more damage and have increased chance to critically strike while attacking from behind or the side. So this means that you always want to stand on the side or behind of the target, because otherwise you're losing a lot of damage. And yeah, 15% damage increase and 10% crit chance is a lot. Always want to stay like here, here, you know, here, behind. You can stay inside the hitbox, but you have to stay behind the enemy inside the hitbox. I see this a lot when people struggle to do like DPS on Soulbeast or even benchmarks on Soulbeast. They are doing the benchmark from the front, and they're like, oh man, I don't understand why my damage is so low. And that's because they didn't read their traits, obviously, right? The trait is really, really important. And this can be quite difficult in some encounters, because not every encounter the boss is tanked by a single person. And that single person is just gonna keep it facing one direction, and then you can just stay behind the boss the entire time. Or you might have a tank that isn't so experienced, and he's gonna move the boss all over the place, they're gonna turn it around constantly. So you kind of need to adapt to this yourself. And you have to be constantly ready to move to change your positioning, right? But yeah, this trait is really, really relevant for this build. Makes you do a lot of extra damage. Vicious Quarry, next. Fury grants ferocity and additional increased critical strike chance. When struck while below the health threshold, you gain Fury. So even extra Fury uptime. If for some reason you were to fall under 75% health, you get a little Fury proc, which can help, I guess. Obviously, it's better to stay above because you're only Scholar runes. You want to be above 90% HP at all times. And just extra crit chance, extra ferocity. And again, just big power damage. So the trait is a bit of both. It makes you do like a tiny little bit of Condi damage because of how the trait line works now, because you don't take spotter, and because you run axe. So it's a pretty good interaction with both. And you also do a lot of power damage, and you definitely want to be flanking the enemy, right? That's what you want to do all the time on this build. You never want to be in front of the target, unless you would die if you were standing behind, right? Obviously. And now we have the Soulbeast Traitline. Elevated Bond. Gain access to stances. Survival in the desert as it enhances your connection to your pet, granting you the ability to meld with them by entering beast mode. That's what I was talking about earlier. So now you can merge with your pet. I don't actually know if oh yeah, no, it does actually say in the tooltip, yeah. So you can see under elevated bond in gray text, traits that affect your pet may affect you differently while in beast mode. So now all the traits that were pet related in Beast Mastery, now we gain those stats. We get health regen over time. We get toughness, power, precision, and all the other stats from the Pack Alpha trait. We get random boons on the pet skills. And yeah, we get, you know, ferocity and all the other stuff. But now we are the pet. And this works for everything else, like your healing skill as well, that we'll get into it a little bit later on, right? So we are one with the pet. This is a really cool interaction between traits. And it does boost your damage a lot. Now you have extra 150 precision. You have extra 150 health. Well, vitality. Extra 150 toughness. Extra 150 everything, right? Every stat in the game. So this is huge. And I'll talk about the next trait as well. Live Fast. Using a Beast ability grants you offensive boons. So now using our Beast ability, which is our F3, we get offensive boons. This is nice, as I was saying earlier. You can self-provide some boons at the beginning of phases, maybe, if your quickness provider is a little slow. Or you can just use it to do damage in your normal DPS rotation, and it will just provide you with free Fury and free quickness. It just gives you a little bit of extra boons for extra uptime, which is always nice, especially when you're pugging and the group isn't exactly organized. Next boon, Furious Strength. You deal increased strike damage while you have Fury. You have Fury, which you can not only get from your group, but you can also self-provide a lot. And you have 50% extra damage, just flat, right? That's an insane damage buff. Essence of Speed. Gaining quickness increases the duration of other boons affecting you. You have a lot of boons. You get quickness, boom, your boons are extended by 2 seconds. You can even do this yourself because your F3 gives you quickness. This means that in the middle of playing the game, in the middle of doing a boss fight, you press F3, all your boons are extended by 2 seconds. Even more boon uptime. It's a 5-second cooldown, obviously. But it's not like you have infinite ways of providing quickness anyway, so... Between your own, the one that your team gives you, this will proc quite a lot. Next trait. Very good trait as well. Twice as vicious. Disabling a foe increases your damage and condition damage for a short duration. Now, remember earlier, well, obviously this is 10% damage, 10% condition damage. Remember earlier when we talked about skirmishing giving you, not skirmishing, sorry, well, no, it is skirmishing, I'm trolling. Skirmishing gives you like the extra bleeding on the critical hits chance. It gives you hidden barbs, which increase your bleeding damage. And your axe skills also apply extra bleeding on 2 and 3. This twice as vicious trait is really good for power damage, but it's also boosting your bleeding now, right? So, again, it's just free extra damage that you got, and it's amazing. It's a very cool interaction between, like, weapon skills, traits, weapon skills, and 2 trait lines that you have here. On the build that we're running now, the ways you would disable a foe are with Longbow 4, which is a long knockback, or a short knockback, depending on the distance, and your Axe 4, which pulls enemies towards you, right? You can also disable foes by taking a different pet, and you can take Gazelle instead of Moa, and then you would be able to disable your enemies with F2 as well. But we can talk about the pet stuff a little bit later. Enemy does not have to be disabled, just disable skill will trigger this buff. Yes, unless they have stability, the game is broken, or it's an enemy that specifically cannot be affected by disable effect. A mob with a blue bar will always proc the trait, assuming that you do actually disable. Like, let's say, okay, a mob with a blue bar will always proc you the trait unless they have stability, because then you're removing the stability, you're not disabling the enemy. If it's an enemy that has a locked break bar, like the golem you can see right now, you know, it does have a break bar, but it's locked, it will still do it, right? You can see I have the trait now. Yeah, it will only not work on enemies that have stability, because obviously you're not disabling them, you're just removing the stab. And enemies that are broken because the game is bugged, or because it's an enemy that specifically states, maybe in the tooltip under its name, it will say like immune to crowd controls or something like that. It is, I want to say it is quite reliable trait. It's just that in some fights it's a little bit unusable, but we can talk about that in detail later on. Last trait, we have Oppressive Superiority. Deal increased strike damage to foes at lower health percentage than you. Conditions you apply to foes at lower health percentage than you last longer. This is a pretty good damage trait. And again, it gives you condition duration, which we're talking about later, again, you know, with the extra bleeding stuff. Obviously, it doesn't show in the hero panel if you wanted to check that, because this is how traits usually work in the game. If it's something related to, you gain extra condition duration against enemies that have weakness on them, it won't show in the hero panel because you're not currently fighting an enemy with weakness, right? It will only have that effect when that thing is happening. So right now, my condition duration is only going to be longer by 10% if I was fighting an enemy that was a lower health percentage than me. Let's do a little recap of the traits. Beastmastery. This gives your pet a lot of stats. It gives your pet boons. It makes your pet do extra damage. It makes your pet heal itself. And it gives you ferocity. Now, all of these things that go to your pet, they become ours the moment we merge with our pet because of the Soulbeast Traitline. Skirmishing Traitline, we gain some extra application of bleeding The bleeding does more damage. We always want to flank our enemy because this gives us extra damage, and extra damage is good. And we get extra ferocity and extra fury that can be generated by either swapping weapon. Also, we get extra swiftness by swapping weapon. And now we have Soulbeast. Again, if you merge with a pet, you get the stats from Pack Alpha. Auto trait, live fast. It gives you quickness and fury whenever you use your beast skill, which is F3. Yeah, it is flat stats. I'm not sure if I said percentage, but yeah. Fear strength gives you extra damage when you fury. Free. Essence of speed, whenever you gain quickness, your other boons are increased by 2 seconds. 5-second cooldown. Twice as vicious, whenever you CC an enemy, it gives you 10% extra damage and condition damage. And oppressive superiority, as long as an enemy is below your health percentage, you will always do more power damage to it, and you will have extra condition duration on it as well. And that is the traits. You can kind of make like an idea of what the rotation is going to look like by maybe looking at the traits now. Like, we are going to be apply some bleeding, which will just happen because we're running axe, and that is going to be doing a pretty good amount of damage. We're going to be flanking the enemy. The pet is going to give us a lot of stats, and obviously we're merging with the pet, which means that having the extra stats and maybe using the pet skills is actually good DPS increase, right? And if you just look at the weapons, the way the weapons work, if you look at Longbow and Axis, Longbow skills have long cooldowns and long cast times. So we want to start on Longbow and then go to Axe and be on Axe most of the time. This is simply because Longbow skills have long cooldown and cast times, and also because of how Longbow 5 works, which we'll get into a little bit later. And Axe skills have shorter cooldowns, or rather, like, I mean, Longbow 3 is not an insanely long cooldown. Longbow 4 is a decently long cooldown. Longbow 2 is kind of short, you could say, but if you look at Axe skills, Axe 2, 4-second cooldown. Axe 3, 8-second cooldown. Axe 4, 12-second cooldown. And then Axe auto-attacks are better than Longbow auto-attacks, if you also make it interact with your Axe skills, right? Imagine this. Imagine the Longbow auto-attacks and the Axe auto-attacks did the exact same damage, right? They had the exact same cast time, the exact same aftercast. They were literally the same, but just on different weapons. The only thing you can do on Longbow is auto-attack, right? But if you're auto-attacking on Axe, your Axe 2 will be off cooldown, and then you can use that one on top of the auto-attacks. So if you combine Axe auto-attacks and Axe 2, you're doing more damage than if you combined Longbow auto-attack, and that's it, because Longbow 2 is going to be on cooldown for longer, right? So by this, you can understand that you want to be on Axe basically most of the time. You never want to be auto-attacking on Longbow, basically. If you had the choice, you would always be on Axe for downtime. But we are going to have to auto-attack on Longbow at some point, because our Axe is going to be on cooldown, obviously, right? So again, idea of the rotation is start on Longbow, get all the Longbow skills out of the way, and then just be on Axe and do big damage, right? Also because on Axe, you gain extra ferocity from this trait. You and your pet gain ferocity, and you gain additional ferocity while wielding an Axe. So that's the idea of the rotation, right? Now let's actually talk about the weapon skills in detail. So Longbow auto-attack, let's start from Longbow. Longbow auto-attack, come over here so you can also use them on the golem. Shoot your foe from long range. The farther the arrow flies, the more damage it does. Now, you might think that, oh, I'm using the skill when I'm in range. I mean, you know, ideally you want to do that, but because of how PvE in this game works, you're most of the time going to be stacked together with the group. So don't worry too much about being like far away. Just be behind the golem so that you're flanking because of this trait, remember. And as long as you're attacking the golem, you're fine, right? The damage increase between like maximum distance and minimum distance is not even like life-changing. So just be close to the group, make sure you're getting your boons, because they're, you know, getting your boons, getting your heals, that's way more important than being a max range with your auto attack, right? Rapid fire. Fire multiple arrows at your foe. This also applies vulnerability, and it's a very long range, just like the rest of the Longbow skills. And it's pretty good damage. It's free vuln application, and it's also a physical projectile finisher with a 20% chance, which is not insane, but it could still be good. Maybe it goes through a poison field or a fire field, and it can do extra stuff, right? And obviously also because you have, oh no, you could think of this as well. You have twice as vicious, which gives you 10% condition damage. That poison stack or that burning stack you're applying with the finisher projectile is doing extra condition damage. Wow, insane, right? Amazing. I love Guild Wars 2. Next, Hunter's Shot. Fire an arrow that grants you stealth whenever it hits an enemy. Your pet gains swiftness. Now, your pet gains swiftness means that you get swiftness because you are the pet. So right now you have no boons. If you use Longbow 3, now you get swiftness, and you're also in stealth because that's what it does. Physical projectile, 100% chance. Long range. This is not something we're going to be using for DPS, really, but it's an insta-cast. I will explain this later on as well, a little bit. If your weapon swap is ready, and you have to swap to Axe, but it's like not actually ready, like it's about to be ready, and you have the choice between casting a full auto attack or doing Longbow 3 and then weapon swapping, because that would be faster. You're doing Longbow 3 and weapon swapping, just because the cast time is shorter and the auto attack takes longer. If the weapon swap is long enough for you to do a full auto attack, then you do the full auto attack, because that is more damage, right? This also depends on how the phase is. If the phase is really short, you definitely don't want to do the extra auto attack, because you want to be on Axe, because Axe is big damage, right? If the phase is a little bit longer, then honestly it doesn't matter too much, right? But we can get into detail this in the rotation as well later on. Longbow 4, point blank shot. This is a very relevant skill, also because it's breakbar damage. Push back your foe with a point blank shot. The closer they are, the farther it pushes them back. So maximum knockback 600, minimum knockback 100. Physical projectile 100% chance, long range, long cooldown, half a second cast time. This skill is relevant because it gives us twice as vicious. So we are going to be using this at the beginning of our burst rotation, at the beginning of our burst damage, the beginning of our rotation, loop, whatever you want to call it, right? Every single time, just so that, well, I say just so that, but it's actually, you know, it gives us 10% extra power damage. That by itself is already huge. And then obviously a little bit of extra condition damage as well on our bleeding when we go to Axe. So that's a very relevant skill. And now we have a Longbow 5, which is a very controversial skill, but it's a very good skill. Try this, okay? Press Longbow 5, and then halfway through the yellow bar casting, move. You see that? The skill is over, right? Now, do it again. Press your special action key, so it resets the cooldown. Do that again, like, and halfway through you stop it, not instantly. Like, wait a little bit longer. My character is having an episode. Oh, I'm free. Okay. Okay, do that again. Okay, you see how fast the skill ends? Now try fully channeling Longbow 5. Look for how much longer the projectiles are falling down. They just ended now, right? This is because Longbow 5 works a little weird. Usually, skills that have a long, like, channel time, they will cast depending, you know, they will hit depending on how far into it you actually stopped using it. Example, Longbow 2, right? If you do Longbow 2, it's a long channel skill. If you stop at any point, that's it. That's the damage it did, right? It's not gonna have like, oh, I cast Longbow 2 for 3 seconds. It will do damage for 6 seconds after I used it. Longbow 5 is really weird because it will do most of its damage and a lot of hits after you fully channeled the skill. So you can look at the yellow bar at the bottom of the screen. When you see that it lights up and it's at the end, then you can stop Longbow 5 and it will do a lot of hits and a lot of damage. Right? But if you cancel it any sooner, what the fuck is this? This is super sad. It does nothing, right? And this is going to be extremely relevant because obviously you're losing an insane amount of damage, right? So that's Longbow 5. The only like thing that might be annoying about the skill is the fact that it does lock you in place while you're using it. And even though a lot of people like to say that it's unplayable in certain fights, it actually is playable everywhere. You just need to be very knowledgeable of the encounters so that you know when to use Longbow 5. And you know where to position yourself to use Longbow 5. Example, obviously you want to be flanking the enemy because of Hunter statics, right? You don't have to be here to do Longbow 5. You can be over here, right? You can be over here. You can be over here. You can be over here to Longbow 5. As long as you're flanking the enemy and you're not dying while casting it, you're good, right? You want to be close to the group, obviously, because they give you boons. But look, if you're ever in a situation where like, oh, I need to use Longbow 5, but I can't flank the boss, that's okay. Just go in front, do Longbow 5, and then you move behind after, and now you're flanking with the rest of your skills as well, right? That you can use later on. You just gotta make sure that you position yourself properly so that the skill can fully channel without interrupting it. Because if you interrupt the skills, you're losing a lot of damage. And that is not good. Now we can swap to Axe. Axe Autoattack, very good skill. It gives you big damage, it gives you might, low duration might. When I say low duration, I mean 5 seconds, which is actually long duration. And a little bit of extra might with a little bit of extra fury that you self-provide, a little bit of self-quickness that you provide from your F3. Overall, this build can self-generate a decent amount of boons, I would say. It just does a lot of damage, it gives you might, and a very cool thing that Axe Autoattacks do is that the projectile actually bounces between enemies. Bounce your axe between multiple foes, gaining might for each enemy struck. This can actually be a really, really big DPS increase on enemies that have adds around them. Because obviously, I can't place markers right now because we're in a party. But assuming that there was an enemy where I'm jumping right now, if I was to attack the golem like this, the projectile would be bouncing from the golem to the enemy and back to the golem. So I would be dealing more DPS to the main target, which I care about, right? So instead of one axe Autoattack, you can think of it as 2 axe Autoattacks. Does it prioritize the main target into bounds, or is it random? It prioritizes the closest, I believe. So if there is a bunch of enemies, it might just go all over the place. But let's just pretend that there is only one enemy next to the boss. It's not something that you rely on to do damage. Right? It's not like, oh, if it doesn't bounce back to the boss, my build is dog shit. No. But if it does happen, it's really, really nice DPS increase, right? So that's kind of cool. And obviously, every enemy you hit gives you extra might, which is just nice for extra boon upkeep. For yourself, by the way, this doesn't go to allies. I know a lot of people like to think that this gives might to allies, but this doesn't give might to allies, guys. It gives you might to you, to yourself, right? Split Blade. Throw a spread pattern of 5 whirling axes that bleeds foes. You go in melee range, you throw the axe, it does big damage, it does bleeding, and obviously I say you want to go in melee range because and you can obviously see this if you go a little bit further back, like over here, and you use axe 5. Never mind, they're still hitting. I need the small hitbox golem to show this, but you probably already understand by looking at the cone of the attack that obviously if the target is tiny and you use the skill from really, really far back, some of the hits might miss because they're gonna go to the side of the golem, right? So you wanna make sure that you're always standing really, really close with this so that you get all of the hits that do power damage, and all the hits are also hitting and applying the extra bleeding. Because as irrelevant as bleeding might seem, because you're playing full Berserker with Scholar Runes, your traits are actually boosting that little bit of bleeding damage. And it's always a nice DPS increase to have, right? So, yeah, big damage. Winter's Bite, axe 3. Throw an axe to chill the area around your foe. Your next pet's attack inflicts weakness. This is just a really, 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 really good skill. It also is... It blasts, right? Throw an axe to chill the area around your foe. This chills enemies around the target. It does big damage. It does big bleeding. 12-second duration. And it applies chill and weakness, which might seem useless. But some classes actually gain value from the enemy being weakened. Like, for example, Spellbreaker, right? Or it's good for soft CC on the enemies. If an enemy has chill and weakness, their break bar is going to break faster. Yeah, Weaver also gets value from the weakness, right? And there's also classes like Hollowsmith that gain value from the enemy having extra conditions on them. The more conditions the enemy has, the more damage you do to it. So this... It might seem like completely useless, but it's actually really, really good for CC, buffing the damage of your group. And obviously, you are using it to do damage, so it's not like you're using it just to be like a team player. No. You're using it because it actually does big damage, right? It also is a very satisfying animation. Look at that. Ooh, look at that chill AoE, man. Big. And now we have Path of Scars, Axe 4. Throw your axe so that it returns to you, striking foes each way. So you throw it, it does damage. It comes back, it does damage, right? And it's a pull as well, which means that it does CC, and it pulls the enemies towards you. Good damage, and it also procs twice as vicious. Does it have a target limit? It doesn't say it has a target limit. I'm not sure if it actually does, though. It shouldn't have a target limit. This is really good on some bosses, exactly because of that. I don't know if there is like a hidden target limit of like 15 or 20 or something. I never tested it that far. But as far as stuff like 5-6 enemies goes, you're good to go, right? So it's really good in some fights exactly because of this. You can pull 5, 6, 7 enemies as long as they're all in a line or they're all stacked together. And you can pull them in and the group is just going to blast them and kill them instantly, right? But yeah, obviously this also procs twice as vicious, which means that we get the extra damage buff from the trait for the rest of our rotation. And there's two things about the skill that are a little odd. One is, if you were to use it exactly where you are, but on the edge of the circle. So let's say right now you're inside the golem, right? You use it exactly on top of you. The skill is going to hit, right? But if you use it on the edge of a target, like right here, right now, it might sometimes miss, depending on how close it is to you, right? So now it's hitting. But if I do it like this, for example, which is exactly on top of me, it might miss. It just disappears inside your own hitbox or something weird like that. So even though you see the circle of the cast time bar like hitting the enemy, ignore that. Like you always want to throw this on the other side of the target because you want it to pull the enemy towards you, right? You don't want it to just do damage and that's it. You want it to actually pull. You want it to hit 100% of the time. So just throw it and make it come back so that you procs the trait. Now you have the other weird thing, which is actually a good thing. You have a little bit of flexibility with the skill, which is you can throw Axe 4 wherever you want. It doesn't work like Greatsword 4 on Warrior, where you just throw it in a straight line and then you're good. You can throw this wherever you want. So let's say that there is enemies really, really far away. You can throw it all the way over there. Let's say that there is enemies really, really close. You can throw it over here. Let's say that the boss is about to phase and you need Axe 4 to do damage right now. You throw it really, really close like this. So you do damage faster, right? Or let's say you don't care that much, so... no. Throwing it further does not increase the cooldown. The cooldown starts when you throw it. So it doesn't matter where you throw it. That's the cool part, right? You can throw whatever you want. The cooldown is always the same. This can also be useful for breaking break bars of the enemies. So let's say there is a break bar coming up, right? And you don't care about that. You're like, oh, the break bar is coming up. I don't give a fuck. You can just do this and you call it a day, right? Axe 4 is cast like very, very close. You don't provide any CC to the boss and people are gonna die. Wow, what a shit team player you are, right? Or you can do another thing. You can throw it really, really far away so that the moment the Axe 4 returns to you, it's actually CCing the target. Right? This is gonna be useful on a couple of bosses. It can be useful on stuff like Samur. I mean, you maybe don't know the bosses I'm talking about because you mentioned you never done a raid before, but bosses that come to mind are Samurog, Demos when you get teleported down. You can do this on VG as well. You can do this on, honestly, Gorsa. You can do this everywhere. You can provide free breakbar damage at no loss whatsoever by simply throwing Axe 4 further away. Now, another thing with throwing it further away rather than closer is that twice as vicious as a 10-second duration, right? But if you reapply 2 stacks of twice as vicious back to back, right? So let's say you use Longbow 4 and Axe 4, like instantly after the other, it's not gonna go up to 20 seconds. It will just reapply up to 10, right? This means that you can prolong, I think that's the word I'm looking for. You can extend the duration of the buff by making the Axe 4 pull return later, right? So now I use Longbow 4, and now I use Axe 4. In a way, I'm like wasting the length of the buff, right? Because I had 10 seconds, and now I have 10 seconds instantly again, right? But if I was to do a Longbow 4 and then throw Axe 4 further away, it would come back later, meaning that the buff is on me for a little bit longer, because I can do this. Now, this is stuff that is like realistically never going to matter, but you can do that. So that's good to know, right? The CC thing, you can CC instantly, you can delay to CC later on. You can do whatever you want, right? So it's just a little bit nice flexibility you have. Now, one thing that you might want to be careful of is stuff like walls, ledges, projectile destruction, anything like that. Because, or like, yeah, well, anything like that. Because if you, let's say the boss has a projectile destruction, like behind it over here where I'm jumping, you would want to throw Axe 4 like not inside that wall. So like really, really close like this, or do you want to throw it sideways like this? Or maybe you want to delay it. Maybe you delay Axe 4 so that you just use it later on to make sure that you get the buff, right? Or you can like position yourself in a completely weird spot so that you can throw it like this instead, right? On bosses where your Axe 4 can't be used on a target to get the trait, twice as vicious, because the boss is immune to crowd controls, the boss has a stability or anything like that, you don't want to use this on the boss. You want to use this on other enemies. Example on Kadim 1. If the boss has permastab, you're not gonna get the trait proc. Or if the game is feeling nice and bug happy, the Axe 4 will just fly off the platform for no reason, and then you're not gonna get the trait proc. But what you can do is throw it on trash mobs. Oh, this boss has perma stability. My trait is not gonna proc. Oh, this boss is immune to crowd controls. It's not gonna get the proc from the trait. Okay, I'm just gonna pull that random ass trash mob at the edge of the arena. And here is the thing. You can still hit the boss on the way there. Yes, yeah, exactly. So you can hit the boss with the Axe 4 on the way to the ad, and then you can pull the ad to get the trait proc, and then it will still hit the boss on the way back as well, right? So you're just cleaving both, but the only one that gives you the trait is the trash mobs over here. All right, Axe 5. Whirling Defense. Spin your axes around you to attack nearby foes. So again, this is a, you might find it similar to Longbow 5. It's a long channeled skill that does a lot of damage. It applies Vuln. It gives you Resolution for some reason. It used to be Retaliation. This doesn't work like Longbow 5 at all, actually, because look at this one. If you stop this skill at any point in its channel, in its duration, it will just end. There is no secret damage that happens later on, right? The one thing it does in common is this one also locks you in place. When using this one, you want to position yourself properly, flanking the boss, and you want to make sure that you're not dying while using it. But if for some reason you need to cancel this ability, because you need to dodge something or move out of some AoE, you can without feeling too bad about it. I mean, to be fair, it's still like... You're still gonna cry for like next week if you cancel Axe 5. That is Axe 5. That's the Axe skills. So let's recap the weapon skills. So Longbow auto attack, damage. It's a filler skill. Ideally, you never want to use this, but you're kind of forced to. Longbow 2, big damage, long channel skill. Applies Vuln. Longbow 3, instacast, kind of bad damage skill that can be used in some situations. If you need swiftness, if you need stealth to maybe de-aggro an enemy or something. Or if you're right about to swap the axe and you don't have time for a full auto attack to go through, you just use Longbow 3. Longbow 4, it procs twice as vicious. It does decent damage. And it's a breakbar skill. Longbow 5, big damage. It locks you in place. You definitely want to make sure that you fully channel this. Otherwise, it will do no damage because it starts its big ticking damage AoE after the skill has been fully channeled. Axe skills. Axe auto attack, big damage, gives you might. It bounces between enemies, so this can cause you to either cleave enemies to kill them, or it can cause you to do more damage on the main target, which is really nice. Axe 2, you want to use this in melee range, ideally. Otherwise, you're going to miss some of the hits if you're standing too far back. Big damage, big bleeding as well. Axe 3, big damage, big bleeding. It has some soft CC and also condis that can help your group with break bars or to do more damage on some builds. Axe 4, big damage. It's a CC. It pulls enemies towards you. And it also procs twice as vicious. You can use this very, very close to the target to simply do damage and proc the trait. You can use this to CC the enemy as well. If the breakbar isn't there yet, you can throw it further away, so it comes back and CCs it later when it is up, and the cooldown is going to be the same because it starts when you use the skill, not when it returns to you. If the boss you're fighting doesn't proc you the trait, for reason maybe stability or some other reason like it's immune to crowd controls, you can hit the golem, you can hit the boss with the skill, but you want to throw it at something else so that it does proc the trait. And you can do damage to both at the same time. Axe 5, big power damage, applies Vuln. It locks you in place just like Longbow 5. But it doesn't matter too much if you interrupt it, because it doesn't start like a mega channel AoE afterwards. So if you want to interrupt this because you're literally going to die, then you can do that. Now let's quickly talk about your profession skills, which are F1, 2, and F3. So that's a healing AoE on your F1. It's a pretty short cast time, long cooldown, but it heals 5 targets for like 2k. It's pretty good if you're actually like about to die, or if there is downtime. Like let's say you're in between phases. You're like, oh, the boss is about to spawn. Oh, the boss is about to come back. Oh, there's nothing to do right now. We're AFKing for some reason. You just use F1, heal your team back to full HP. Just nice, right? Or you can also save people from dying during explosions or whatever is going on. F2, very, very fast skill. Obviously, the cast time is long, but that's because it's a channeled ability. Very, very fast damage skill. Hits 5 times, applies bone, melee range. That's kind of it. 20-second cooldown. Worldly Impact. Beast skill, so it gives you fury and quickness. It's a leap. It does big damage. It's fairly quick. And 25-second cooldown. And that is kind of it. Now, we are going to be using F2 and F3, because obviously those are the ones that do damage, right? F1 is a support skill. We are going to be using them once every loop. So keep in mind they have a 25 and 20-second cooldown. This means that we are not going to be spamming them, obviously. Just once per loop, and then those skills are out of the way. Very easy to work with them in the DPS rotation, right? We can actually talk about the Gazelle skills as well, just because that's what you were using, and it can actually be used, and it can actually be good in certain encounters where you need more break bar damage or maybe movement. Your F1, it does damage, it's a kick, it's second cooldown damage, it applies 3 stacks of bone, it's pretty good. F2, it's a 1-second daze, so it does CC, and it's a very long movement skill. Right, very nice and good. It does CC again. That's it. Pog. Obviously, the fact that it does... Yes, exactly. The fact that it does CC is good for twice as vicious. Now, on the Longbow Axe build, you don't need the twice as vicious proc from this pet because you are running... because you're running Longbow and Axe, right? If you were running the Warhorn variant, which we're not doing, you would have to run this pet because of the F2. Even though Warhorn 5 is a CC, but whatever. It's not that big of a damage loss, it's just that the rotation is going to look a little different. And obviously, Worldly Impact, the F3, is exactly the same, so that doesn't really change. But yeah, let's go back to Moa, and let's look at our utility skills. Let's start from the healing skill. We heal as one. Heal yourself and your pet. You each gain copies of each other's boons. Now, if we were unmerged, this is obviously a core game healing skill. If we were unmerged in the core game, or you were playing, I don't know, Druid or Untamed or whatever, and you use We Heal as one, if your pet has swiftness, you get the swiftness. If you have might, your pet gains might. And it just kind of swap the boons around. But since you are one, right? We heal as one, you actually are one. You are your pet. The boons are extended in a way. Like you get boons, you get regen and swiftness because that's what the skill does. Okay, so if I use my F3 right now, actually I'm gonna weapon swap and use F3, right? I use weapon swap and F3. Now I have these boons. Thing is, me and my pet have these boons. So the moment I use my skill, my pet is giving me his, and I'm giving mine to him, right? So we are copying each other's boons. This ends up turning into our boons just being extended, because we're each gaining a copy of the same boons. And even better, you actually give this to your allies as well. So if I use my heal now, you have swiftness and regen. Simplified extension of current boons. Yes, but the reason why that happens is important to understand. It's actually not important to understand. I just want to explain it properly. Heal and skill variations. You can maybe take Healing Spring if you need a lot of condition cleanses. Yeah, the bear heal is good. Like the bear heal, Heal yourself and your pet. Lose conditions while in the stance. Healing for each condition lost. This is for like self. If your group needs a condition cleanse, you can take Healing Spring as well. Realistically, the two that you are going to be using are We Heal as one. You can take the Bear healing skill if you're doing fights that are condition damage heavy. Or if you're just not getting any condi cleanses from your group. But if you're not getting any condi cleanses from your group in your subgroup, it means that your entire subgroup gets no condi cleanses, so you might want to consider running Healing Spring instead, because you will survive with the Bear healing skill, they won't. They will die. Right? Yeah, I already explained this like at the beginning kind of the guide, but if you give yourself boons with weapon swapping on Axe and F3, and then you use your healing skill, you will extend the quickness as well. And obviously, because you're giving yourself... We gotta wait a little bit now, but... Because you're giving yourself quickness, the rest of your boons also get extended by 2 seconds because of Essence of Speed. So doing this combination of swapping weapon, using your F3 and your healing skill, or using your healing skill and your F3, is a really good boon extension that you can do. So swap, use your heal, and then use your F3. And now you have 20 seconds of swiftness, 10 seconds of fury, and stupid amount of regen, right? Now let's talk about next utility skill, which is your Signet of the Wild. Passively, this increases your ferocity, increases the ferocity of you and your pet, but we are the pet. If you activate it, if you activated a skill back like a long time ago, it used to make you big. It used to make your character massive. That was so fucking good. Now it just immobilizes the enemy. The important thing to note here is that you have an immobilize on your skill bar. If there is ever a situation where immobilizing an enemy makes you win, you are pressing the skill. This is only realistically ever going to happen on Demos challenge mode. Otherwise, you just keep the skill on your bar, giving you extra ferocity for free. Next one is a Sikkim. Command your pet, command your pet rushes at your foe, revealing them and dealing increased damage. This skill is the reason why stuff like cancelling Longbow 5 is very, very relevant. The skill increases your damage by 25% for everything you do, right? So your entire burst rotation is going to have Sikkim in it, so all of your damage will be increased by 25%. Well, all the skills you're pressing will be increased by 25%. So if you cancel Longbow 5 during Sikkim, you are sad. Right, look at this. Right now, I have Sikkim right now for 6 seconds. I cancel my Longbow 5. Yeah, I'm useless. I'm doing nothing right now. I might as well /GG and relog to Spellbreaker. It's a really, really strong damage skill. It's also a reveal, which can actually troll your group on some fights when enemies go in stealth, like Largos, for example. But yeah, it's a 28-second cooldown. The Sikkim damage boost only applied to the target on which is used, or also mobs nearby. It's only on the target you use it on. So obviously, you know, it's not that big of a deal simply because you're mostly going to fight one boss at a time. But you want to make sure that you do use it on the correct target, right? So to give you an example, if there is a small damage phase that is not boss related, like the boss has gone into a phase where you can't fight the boss anymore, but the phase only lasted like 5 seconds. You don't want to use Sikkim on that guy, because this means that after 5 seconds that the other is dead, you won't have Sikkim ready for the boss, and you're losing a lot of damage, right? You want to make sure you save this for the big boy boss and the big boy burst. It actually makes your pet do 40% extra damage if you're unmerged. But obviously, if you're unmerged, then you don't have stats, you don't have your beast skills, and you actually end up losing more damage than you would gain because your pet is fucking useless, right? Frost Trap. Set the trap that shields foes. Now, I want you to place the trap with me. Place the trap over here. You can see the trap is in range. The trap did proc, and it did do damage, right? Now place the frost trap over here. You can see that the trap... Well, you can see that my trap is clearly in range. But it's not proccing. Now, if you have about 30 hours of time, we can actually just sit here and we might see that at some point in time, the trap will actually proc randomly by itself. This is weird because it changes on the hitbox size of the enemy, but you basically want to place this as close as possible to the enemy because it needs to hit the center radius of the hitbox to proc. Or rather, the trap. Think of it like this. Like, think of the trap as, yes, that's like how it procs if somebody walks into it or moves into it. But imagine the trap being smaller than this, and there's always place it closer to the enemy, right? This is also a little weird on enemies that have their hitbox up in the air. Like, obviously, you can see the golem right here. This is the hitbox, right? There is some fights that have an hitbox up in the sky. So to place a trap properly, you need to place it exactly under them. The short of it is, place this closer to the enemies. If it's an enemy that is up in the air, you want to place this exactly under it, or it's just not going to proc, unless an enemy walks into it. Now, you can actually force enemies to walk into the trap by pulling them with Axe 4. Think of this, okay? You place the trap, now it's there, and it's on cooldown, and it's recharging the cooldown. Now, it doesn't matter when the trap is procced, as long as it does proc. Like, obviously, yes, you want the trap to proc during Sikkim, so that the damage of the trap is increased, because Sikkim gives you 25% extra damage, right? But it's better to have a proc randomly at some point than not proccing it at all. Otherwise, the next time you place the trap, that one disappears, right? And then you lost value, you lost damage. So if a trap is not going to be procced ever by the boss because it's too far up in the air, you can actually pull an enemy into it. The enemy will proc the trap, and it will still damage the ad that is up in the sky. It's not going to proc on the enemy that's up in the sky, but it will still do damage to it. Because just like the golem, like, look at this. Like, right now my trap is on the golem hitbox. This means that if I pulled an enemy in it, it would be damaging the golem. It's just that the golem doesn't activate the trap, right? Elite skill, 1 wolf pack. Your successful attacks will trigger a second strike while in this stance. So you hit an enemy, you hit the enemy again. So now I have the stance, I auto-attack with longbow. Boom, another hit happens. Boom, another hit happens. Boom, another hit doesn't happen because the stance ran out. Now there is a delay. This doesn't mean that every single strike you do is going to hit again. It has a 1 second cooldown. So every second, whatever procs it will hit again. Look at all the good damage, dude. Look at that. Look at all those procs. Look at all those numbers. Ooh. But yeah, that is what a skill does. That's all the utilities. Let's do a little recap. Healing skill extends your boons. You can take the bear if you need Condi cleanses. You can take the healing spring if your group needs Condi cleanses. Signet, you let it passively give you ferocity. If you're about to wipe on like Demos challenge mode because the ads are walking in, you activate the immobilize because that's going to save you from wiping, right? Obviously you lose damage, but it doesn't matter because you're alive. Sikkim, the target you click this on will receive extra damage, and it also reveals. Frost Trap, it does damage. You want to place this where the hitbox of the enemy is as close as possible, otherwise it might just not activate. But yeah, if it's a situation like exactly like this, you can proc the trap by pulling an enemy in it, and as long as it's on the hitbox of the enemy, it will still damage the enemy. The only issue is that it doesn't proc on the enemy, because traps in this game are weird. Just like Dragon Hunter ones as well. Your elite skill, whenever you hit an enemy, if you are in the elite skill, if you are in one wolf pack, it will trigger another strike, but it has a 1 second internal cooldown. So during your rotation, you're gonna do a lot of hits, and then another strike is going to happen. Now, the big damage comes from doing Longbow 5. Imagine this, okay? Longbow 5 as like the big long AoE that happens after you pressed the full skill, right? All those hits are going to be buffed by Sikkim, and all of those hits will also guarantee that your one wolf pack 1 second cooldown is always procced instantly as soon as it's available. No downtime, right? Obviously, you're also doing other hits while Longbow 5 is attacking the enemy. But it's just extra hits to make sure that you get full value from the 6 seconds straight, right? So that is what you're doing. You start with Longbow 5, and then you activate all the damage modifiers, then you swap to Axe, and you do big damage. And then you just repeat it, right? That is the rotation. So now let's actually talk about the rotation. Let's start the rotation. Let's just start with the opener. Let's do a very nice Longbow 5. And when Longbow 5 is fully channeled, you are going to press Longbow 4. And then you are going to weapon swap. Okay. Now we are on Axe. What do we want to do on Axe? Very simple. You do 2, 3, 4, 5. In that order. Very nice. So now let's repeat this. Let's swap back to Longbow. Let's wait a little bit for the weapon swap to be ready. And then you do full Longbow 5, so don't interrupt it. Then you do 4, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah, I think you interrupted your Axe 2. Let's actually get boons from the console, so come over here. That's the basic opener, right? We haven't used any of your utilities yet. We haven't used our beast skills yet. Now, let's do that again, but this time let's focus on the Axe, right? So go to Axe and do 2, 3, 4, 5. When 2 is ready, use 2 again and just auto attack. When 3 is ready, use 3 again. When 2 is ready, use 2 again. When 4 is ready, use 4 again. And then you do 2, 3, and weapon swap. It sounds like a lot of words I'm saying right now. Just use things as they come off cooldown. Right? 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you use 2. Auto attack. As soon as something is ready, press it. Something is ready again, press it. Axe 4 is ready, press it. And then you do 2, 3, and then you swap. Right? That's what you do on Axe. It's a lot of skills, it's a lot of stuff that I said, but it's very, very simple to understand, right? If it's ready, I press it and it does damage, right? Super simple. And that's when you go back to Longbow and you press Longbow 2. So you do Longbow 2, and that's it, the end. That's the skeleton of the entire rotation, right? So let's do this again. Let's start from the very, very beginning. So you do 5, 4 weapon swap, use all of your axe skills, and then you use 2, and then you use stuff as it's coming off cooldown and it's ready. Then you go to Longbow and you press Longbow 2, and then you're done. Remember, when you are on Axe, you want to do all the skills, then you do 2 and 3, then you do 4, and then you do 2 and 3, and then you swap back to bow again, right? You don't want to swap back to longbow after Axe 5. You want to swap back to longbow after you reuse Axe 2 and 3. See, that's better. Now let's fix your longbow 5. So longbow 5 needs to never be cancelled, right? So just do it a couple of times. Do longbow 5. Make sure that it doesn't cancel. Right? Press the special action key. See, now you canceled it. You gotta make sure that you see the yellow bar lighting up before you actually press longbow 4. You don't want to press longbow 4 sooner than that. When it pops out, the yellow bar, it just lights up. It's like a darker color. It becomes brighter. That's when you can use longbow 4. Well, I mean, you can use longbow 4 a little bit sooner than that, but the timing is really tight. It's better if you cast longbow 4 a little bit later than if you cancel longbow 5 accidentally, right? Okay, so now let's do it one more time. Let's do longbow 5, 4, then you swap to axe. Use all the skills. 2. And then you're done. Very nice. All right. The rotation is the exact same, but we can't do longbow 5 and swap to axe because the weapon swap is on cooldown, yeah? So if you swap the longbow and you use 2, and then you're like, oh, I use longbow 5 and then 4 and swap. You can't really do that because Axe 4 is still on cooldown because you just went away from it. So now we need to just auto-attack on longbow for about 4 to 6 auto-attacks, depending on a bunch of stuff, like your elite skill cooldown, or if you are using the elite skill in the rotation, which means that it gets delayed a bit, or just if the boss is like almost dead and you want to start doing damage now rather than later, right? Or if you want to place your frost trap at the beginning rather than the end. So let's just think that the auto attacks are like between 4 and 6, but that's what you want to do. So let's just focus on, like, let's do 5 auto attacks for now, right? Then, you know, once you're maybe more experienced, you can like focus on doing whichever one depending on the situation. So do longbow 2. Let's just say that you just swapped the longbow and then auto attack 5 times. Okay. After you auto attack 5 times, you want to use longbow 4 and 5. And then you do the exact same thing you did before. So you swap the axe, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you just repeat it. Okay, now you swap the longbow. Now you do the exact same thing. Auto attack 5 times. Yeah, axe is on cooldown. That's okay. It's obviously not supposed to be this fast. Okay, now do the full opener. Do 5, 4, swap, and use all the axe skills. Okay, so this is something that you're gonna have to practice mostly in your own time, but maybe you'll actually get used to it by the end of this. But you really have to make sure that you don't rush using longbow 5. You want to be fast in doing the rotation, obviously, yes. But if you are too fast and you cancel Longbow 5, your damage is gone. So you don't want to do that for basically any reason. So obviously the reason why we're using 4 on Longbow is to get twice as vicious. The reason why we're using Axe 4 on Axe is because we're getting twice as vicious, right? And also because they do damage, obviously. So that is why we use Axe 4 before 5, right? And that is why we use Longbow 4 before 5 and before we do the entire rest of the rotation, right? We want to have the buff of twice as vicious for the whole burst every single time. So if you were to do Longbow 5 and 4, or Longbow 4 and 5, it doesn't actually matter that much. In some situations, you are going to do 5 first, like in the opener, for example, right? Why do we do 5 in the opener? It's so that the Golem DPS starts a little bit later, rather than starting instantly with 4, which means that our DPS is higher. And same goes for real fights. In real fights, you would want to use 5 before a boss is even vulnerable, right? The boss is about to spawn, the boss is about to be hittable. I'm already using Longbow 5. So that by the time the boss is hittable, I'm already doing all my burst damage. And I'm not wasting any time casting the skill. The skill is already on the ground. Now let's add something on top. Let's add your beast skills, or well, your pet skills. I guess only one is a beast skill, technically. Let's add your F3 and your F2. So we do the opener as normal. So let's do 5, 4. Swap the axe. And then you do axe 4. And before you do axe 5, so you do axe 4, F3, and then you do axe 5. Right? So when you go to axe, you do 2, 3, 4, F3, and 5. Very nice. And that is the first pet skill we want to use. The second pet skill happens after your axe 2. You know that axe 2 that comes off cooldown after axe 5? After that axe 2, you use your F2. Right? So do it now on axe, right? Just stay on axe and just do 2, 3, 4, F3, 5. And then you do axe 2, F2. Axe 2, F2. Very nice. And that's how you use the pet skills. On the opener, anyway. Right? So the opener, let's do it all over again now. Okay, so let's do 5, 4, 2, 3, 4, F5, 5, 2, F2. There we go. Yeah, now you can do the rest as well. And then when you end up on Longbow, we can stop. Okay, you cancel Longbow 5 again. So really make sure that you're fully casting that one, okay? Now, when you are on Longbow, and you do that Longbow 2, and then you auto-attack those like 4 to 6 times, now it will be different a little bit. After those auto-attacks, you are going to be doing 4, 5, and then you are going to be using your pet skills, and then you are going to swap. So it is a little bit different because our weapon swap is still on cooldown, right? So we can't swap the axe and then do the pet skills. The order of the pet skills is F3 and F2. It doesn't really matter too much, but we want to use F3 first because F3 has a longer cooldown. So the sooner we use it, the sooner it comes back, right? And also because it gives us boons. So that's a nice extra bonus thing. Want to make sure we have those boons before we do skills. So just in case that we don't have boons, now we do have boons because we use F3, right? And quickness is big. So yeah, what you do now is, you can try right now, you can do 4, 5 on Longbow, and then you use F3, F2, and then you swap to axe and do all the axe stuff. There you go. Now you don't have to worry about the pet skills. Now you never use the pet skills again until you're back to Longbow. And you use them the exact same way. Okay, so now you Longbow, you do Longbow 2. Just keep going now. Auto attack like 6 times. And then do 4, 5, F3, F2. Let's just do it again now. Okay, nice. Now use all the axe skills, go back to Longbow. And do Longbow 2 afterwards. Okay, now you auto attack about 5, 6 times. And then you do 4, 5, F3, F2. And then you swap to axe. And then you do all the stuff. Very nice. So, yeah, that is why you want to auto attack a little bit longer, right? So, keep in mind that you, like, once you start your burst damage, you don't want to do auto attacks in between, right? You want to get all the auto attacks out of the way, and then you want to do all of your burst damage afterwards. This is because when you're auto attacking a Longbow, you don't have Sikkim, and well, you also don't have one Wolfpack. Once you proc Sikkim and one Wolfpack, you want to be buffing the damage of skills, not to Longbow auto attacks. That is very important for now, because now we're going to be adding the rest of the skills. So now we know what to do on Longbow, we know what to do on Axe, we know what to do with the Beast skills. Sikkim is an insta-cast, so it doesn't really change our rotation at all. So you want to press Sikkim only at the end of Longbow 5. So at the start of the rotation, you do Longbow 5, and at the very end of it, you know, when it becomes yellow, when it lights up, you press Sikkim. And the rest of the rotation is exactly the same, because as I said, it's an insta-cast, so it doesn't interrupt any of our skills. So you do Longbow 5, Sikkim, and then you do the rest of your stuff, right? And then you're good. Longbow 5, Sikkim, 4, and then you weapon swap. Where is the Sikkim? I don't see it. Very nice. Now you do 2 F2. Okay, now use those skills as they come with cooldown. And auto attack between. Now you do Longbow 2, auto attack about 5, 6 times. And then you do 4, 5, and you Sikkim again at the end of 5. Yes, there you go. And now from this point on, that's what you do the entire rotation, right? The only difference is in the opener, basically. Now you just keep going like this for a while. Okay, you can stop. So the F2 you used there was... It might not seem like a big deal to use F2 there, but using F2 there means that you are not using it during like your burst window, so it will do less damage. You want to make sure that you're using all the good damage skills once per loop, because they are being used in the burst window, which makes you do more damage because of Sikkim, right? Or you're just proccing one Wolfpack trait, not trait, you're proccing one Wolfpack elite skill as soon as available. However, if the boss is about to die, the boss is about to go into a phase, and you don't have time to wait for the next F2, you just use it now. Like, if somebody was doing a benchmark and the golem was about to die, they're not going to wait for F2 on the next loop, they're just going to use it now and kill the golem with it. So that is something that you can do to change the rotation into a real fight. Let's do the rotation again. So start with Longbow 5, do 4, obviously use Sikkim at the end of 5, and then weapon swap and do 2, 3, 4, F3, 5, and then do the rest of it. I'm gonna do it first. And then you just keep going like this the entire time. Now my weapon swap is on cooldown, but that's where we add the other utilities. So it's a little awkward now because you might need to auto-attack more than you want to, and the cooldowns don't like exactly line up. They don't feel like super smooth. But that's because we're missing some skills. We're missing the cast time of some abilities that make the rotation a little bit longer, but they also make us do more damage. So now we're going to add Frost Trap. And then we're going to add one wolf pack later on, and then we're actually done. So Frost Trap, again, we want to use once per loop. So as soon as you hear this, the rotation is instantly super easy because it's not something that you have to spam. Obviously the cooldown is 30 seconds. We can even spam it if we wanted to. As I said before, you want to be careful on how you place Frost Trap, because as you can see right now, if you click on the golem, this is clearly inside of the golem's hitbox. The game disagrees. And as you've seen before, if you were to AFK here for about 15 minutes, it would just randomly proc for absolutely no reason other than just the game trolling you, right? So make sure you're always placing it really, really close to the boss so that it does actually proc, it does do damage, it does apply the chill to maybe do some break bar damage or whatever else. We are going to be using the Frost Trap in the beginning of the burst. So we do Longbow 5, and then we can use the Frost Trap after Longbow 5. We can use the Frost Trap before F3, after F3, before Longbow 4, after Longbow 4. It doesn't matter too much. Also because it's not always going to line up. But ideally, you want to use the Frost Trap. You want to do Longbow 5, Frost Trap, and then Longbow 4. That's how you ideally want to do it. And then it's going to get even weirder once you add one wolf pack on top. But the reason for this is that when you place Frost Trap, you have a little bit of time to do something else. So you can do this. You can do Frost Trap Longbow 4 very, very quickly. And you can activate the trait with Longbow 4 before the Frost Trap first hit even happens. This means that you can buff the full Frost Trap damage with the twice as vicious trait. Okay? So you do Frost Trap Longbow 4, boom, the first hit now did extra 10% damage. It's obviously, it's one hit of the Frost Trap out of 5. If one of them doesn't do the 10% extra damage, it's not the end of the world, but that's how you want to do it. So you do 5, Sicken Frost Trap 4, and then you swap the axe. It's only the beginning that's super, maybe a little bit annoying, because you gotta press a lot of keys in a specific order very fast, but you only press them once per loop. So again, 5, Sicken Frost Trap 4. 5, Sicken Frost Trap 4. Okay, you can stop. So the Frost Trap never went off. You cancel Frost Trap with Longbow 4. And that is going to happen. So just how you can cancel Longbow 5 with 4, you can cancel Frost Trap with 4. You can cancel every skill, unless it's a healing skill, with 4, basically. Because 4 is a CC. So you need to make sure that Frost Trap is fully channeled and it's on the ground before pressing Longbow 4. You can do this 2 ways at the beginning. Look at the yellow bar. Just like you look at the yellow bar for Longbow 5, look at the yellow bar for Frost Trap. You see it light up, boom, Longbow 4. How is this Frost Trap not proccing? What the fuck? Alright, 5, Sicken, Frost Trap 4. Now my Frost Trap procced, okay. Okay, your Frost Trap didn't go off, so you do it again. Just practice for a little bit. Do 5 Sicken, Frost Trap 4. Just do that for a while. Do not rush. It's better to cast the next skill slower than cancelling what you're doing, right? Why does Sicken have a channel bar? It doesn't have a channel bar. It's your auto attack on Longbow, probably. There you go. Now do the entire rotation. Here's the thing. Obviously, it loops. So the next time you end up on Longbow, right, you are doing the exact same thing. You auto-attack 5 times. Yeah, keybinds are important, obviously. But keep this in mind. Every time you are on Longbow and you're starting your burst, you're always doing the same thing. You're doing 5, Sikkim, Frost Trap 4, and then you do the axe stuff. Right? Well, you do F2, F3 and F2 on the second time you end up on the Longbow part of it, but the order is basically always the same. Or, well, ideally it would be, but the cooldowns don't line up, like, perfectly every single time. Well, I mean, you can make the cooldowns line up perfectly every single time, but your rotation is going to be slower, which in short burst windows, it's going to end up being less DPS. Well, it's gonna end up being less damage. The reason why you run Hydromancy is because the proc of Hydromancy was boosted by Sikkim a lot. The moment they nerfed Sikkim to what is it, 25% now? They nerfed Sikkim down to 25%. The proc that you get from Hydromancy when you weapon swap is a little bit less. Air Sigils, more DPS on the golem, but if you're running Air Sigil in a real fight, and you're using something like Longbow 4 or Frost Trap, and it's hitting another enemy that isn't the boss, and your Air Sigil procs on a trash mob rather than the main target, your Air Sigil is useless. So impact is gonna be better in every fight in the game, basically. Air is just better on the golem. Or fights that have single enemies, like Cairn or something. 5 Sikkim, Frost Trap 4. And then we can get into some details about the builds. Oh, he's blasting. He's going for it. Right, now you do 2 F2. Very nice. Now use things as they come off cooldown. Okay, auto attack about 5 times. Then you do 4, 5 Sikkim. Frost Trap, F3, F2. And then you just repeat this infinitely. Let's add the final step. Then I'm gonna fix some minor mistakes you're making. And then I will give you some real encounter stuff that you can do or you might want to do. Even though you never done a raid before, so some of the examples I'll give you are gonna sound like nonsense. 1 Wolfpack elite skill. This, as I said before, if you hit something, it does another hit. 1 second cooldown, so not every hit you do is gonna generate another hit, but the more hits we have on the ground with the skill, the more we guarantee that it's always proccing off cooldown and we get the full value. Maybe not all 6 seconds, maybe 5 seconds is good enough. So you're doing 5 Sikkim. This is not going to change ever. Remember, Sikkim always at the end of 5. For the reason being, that's when Longbow 5 starts to do actual damage. And that's also when we swap the axe and do the rest of our damage, which is not going to be buffed by 25%. Then after that, you do Frost Trap, Longbow 4, right? So it's 5 Sikkim, Frost Trap, Longbow 4, and then you press 1 Wolfpack, right? So that all of our Longbow 5 hits, all of our axe skills, the Frost Trap that's still ticking on the ground, all of our axe 5, everything we're using after that for the next 5 seconds now, it's going to be 4, are all going to proc the trait. Not the trait. I keep calling this a trait. It's basically a trait. It's all going to proc the elite skill. So that's what we're doing. We're doing Longbow 5 Sikkim, Frost Trap Longbow 4, Frost Trap doesn't proc, fuck you game, and then we use 1 Wolfpack. Then you swap the axe and do all of your axe stuff. Try that for a little bit, so do this in order. You do 5 Sikkim, Frost Trap 4, 1 Wolfpack. Now, do that again. Try to do it without auto-attacking in between. No downtime between the skills. If you wanna make it a little easier, right? You're using 5 Sikkim Frost Trap. Just press Sikkim and Frost Trap at the exact same time. If the cast time of Sikkim kind of throws you off. All right, so now let's do the entire rotation without one wolf pack. So we're not using it, okay? So do Longbow 5, Sikkim, Frost Trap 4, 2, 3, 4, F3, 5, 2, F2. Use things as they're ready. Then swap to Longbow, use Longbow 2, Autoattack like 5 or 6 times. Then again, you do 4, 5, Sikkim, Frost Trap, F3, F2, swap to Axe. Use things as they come off cooldown. Look at the cooldown that one Wolfpack has. It's 60 seconds. You are not going to be able to use this every single loop, right? So you use it once at the beginning. So again, you do 5, Sikkim, Frost Trap 4, and then you use one Wolfpack. The next time, it won't be ready. But whenever it is ready, you always want to use it in that general area of the rotation. It doesn't matter exactly when or where you use it, especially in a real fight where cooldowns line up a little better because there is downtime. You just want to make sure that when you're using it, your Longbow 5, your Frost Trap, and you're doing like your axe skills is happening. You never want to use it like, oh, I did all my axe skills, now I press it. No, because now like you're not really hitting with anything. You want to make sure that you're proccing the hits instantly as soon as they're available, but more importantly, you want to make sure that those hits have Sikkim on top, right? So that they do extra damage. 25% extra damage is quite a lot. Always make sure that you press it whenever you're doing Longbow 5, Sikkim, and then you're doing the other stuff, right? So that the damage can be increased on every single hit. That is the whole rotation. So now let's just, well, I'm gonna do it once. You can watch it on stream if you have the stream opened. Okay, 5, Sikkim, Frost Trap, Elite. I didn't use Elite skill properly, but as I said, it doesn't matter too much. So you can just kind of AFK and do whatever you want there. Use skills as they come off cooldown. I did do that, yes. Watch my Frost Trap not proc. Oh, I did, actually, never mind. One, 2, 3, 4. Now I did this. Now, do a full rotation, also whenever it comes off cooldown again, right? And again, remember, you want the auto attack on Longbow about 5 times, right? To make sure that everything does line up and you're not griefing. All right, good job. Now, that is the whole rotation. There isn't anything else to add to that besides fixing a couple of things and things that you can do in real fights. So let's actually get into it. This is something that is going to happen on every class. It's not something Soulbeast related only. But think of the cast time of a skill. Let's say I am fully channeling... you should probably watch on stream for this if you have it opened. So there is certain skills in the game that cancel other ones. Example, if I'm using a normal skill and then I'm using a CC, I will cancel the normal skill because the CC one has priority over that. If I'm using the CC skill and then I activate my healing skill will have priority over the CC skill, right? This is relevant because if I was casting for the entire cast time duration a skill like Axe 2, and then look at the yellow bar, right? This is the important part. If you look at the yellow bar of Axe 2, if I was to cancel the skill at the very end, exactly before it actually launches and does damage, that's a huge DPS loss. Because if you skip Axe 2 and you use another skill, you just didn't use Axe 2 and you're losing damage. But if you cast the skill and then you also cancel it, that is uninstall tier of DPS loss in the long run. It's better to just not press it than pressing it and then also canceling it at the end. And this is what you need to stop doing on mostly your auto attacks. On Axe, it's a little awkward when you're in the middle of an auto attack, but your Axe 2 is ready, because obviously you want to use your Axe 2. It's awkward when your Axe 4 is ready, but you're in the middle of an auto attack because you want to use your Axe 4, but it's actually better to... Yes, exactly. After the auto attack is fully channeled. Yeah, exactly. Unless the boss was about to phase, and you can do like Axe 4 very, very close to you. Like, oh, the boss is phasing. I don't have time to do auto attack and 4. I just do 4 now. Because Axe 4 does more damage in an auto attack on going and coming back, right? It's like very fast damage. It's a very fast damage skill. It's like very, very niche situation where you can do that, right? Other than that, you always want to wait for the auto attack to end. It's just better to chain skills together also because this way you don't start an auto attack that might be interrupted, right? It is just overall just makes the rotation smoother, makes the rotation look better, makes the rotation more satisfying, and it just ends up in being a... I can make you the example, like this that I'm telling you right now is not like an insane damage increase in a real encounter. It's a pretty relevant damage increase on a benchmark or in a fight that is going on for like 10 minutes. Because if a fight is going on for 10 minutes, this means that this happens a lot over time, and that tiny DPS loss will be insane by the end of the 10-minute encounter. Stuff that you can do in real encounters, right? I already explained you earlier the Axe 4 thing. If an enemy doesn't proc the trait with Axe 4, right? You can always proc it on enemies in the distance, and you can hit the main target, proc it on the enemy in the distance, and still hit the main target when it comes back. So you lose no damage from doing this. You just make sure that your trait does actually proc in case it doesn't proc on the main enemy. You can also pull enemies on the group. You can pull enemies on you by using Axe 4, right? I give you the example of Slaughtersaur. Boss, it's a huge boss, and there's a lot of trash mobs around the arena that are constantly shooting projectiles at you, annoying you, they're corrupting your boons. It's disgusting. You as a soul beast can get between the boss and the adds, and you can hit the boss, pull the adds on the group, and then the adds are just going to die from all the group doing damage to the boss. So they're just going to get cleaved and die, right? So that is something really, really nice that you can do on Slaughtersaur to help your group win. You can do this on Zera as well. Not a fight that has trash mobs that you can pull in so they don't shoot projectiles or kill you from the distance. And again, for break bar damage, you can throw Axe 4 very, very far away if the break bar isn't up yet, so that when it does come back, it will actually break the break bar, right? So you are delaying your CC, but you're not delaying your rotation in any way, or your damage in any way, even, really. Unless the boss was the phase when your Axe 4 is over there and the boss phases, yes, you're losing damage, obviously. But you wouldn't want to do that anyway, because if the boss is phasing, this is how you use your Axe 4. Like, use it very, very close, right? And another thing to note for real encounters. You don't want to be on Longbow if you aren't going to be using Longbow 5. So let's say in a very, very small split phase, some downtime is happening, you have to do some mechanic that doesn't allow you to stand still to the Longbow 5 or something. You just don't swap the Longbow. You just stay on Axe, and you just do, you basically do, you do like an Axe burst, which is going to look something along the lines of throw Axe 4, and then you use Sikkim, Frost Trap, F3, F5, and then the rest of your skills. It's a little awkward. You don't really do this anywhere that comes to mind, but there is some situations where you are going to be doing this, mostly because you don't have boons, and your rotation is gonna get absolutely deleted from the servers if you don't have boons. So this is actually better than going to Longbow and not having like quickness and no alacrity, and you're also dying and other stuff is happening. You can't stand still to the Longbow 5 or whatever, right? But the main reason for this is because being on Axe Autoattack and Axe 2 is better than being on Longbow Autoattack and Longbow 2. So if you're ever in a situation like this, it's better to stay like this and just auto-attack like this. Especially if there is like more enemies around, because your Axe Autoattack can bounce between them, right? So it's actually, you're generating way more damage by doing that as well. And this is like very, very situational stuff. Something else, again, you can use the Immobilize from Signet to Wild if you really need an Immobilize, which basically never happens. If you need fast break bar damage, because otherwise you're going to wipe, like maybe on KC. KC has a mechanic that if you don't CC the boss, you have like all these ads around the arena that are going to explode and do a lot of damage. Now, you have two options. Either kill the enemies so they don't explode and do a lot of damage, or you break the break bar of the boss really fast so that these enemies disappear, right? If that's the case, you can simply do Longbow 4, Axe 4, super fast one after the other, and you just don't care about your DPS rotation anymore, because the boss is now CC'd and he's gonna disappear, right? So you do Longbow 4, Axe 4, and then you can do a bunch of other skills in the meantime, because you still have access to them, obviously. And the most important thing is that after every phase that a boss has gone through, you know, like let's say Belgardian, the first boss in the game, the boss is phased, you want to swap the Longbow instantly, right? You don't want to stay on Axe, unless it's what I told you earlier, like you have no boons, or you don't have enough time to swap the Longbow and go to Axe. The general main rule is that as soon as a boss is phased, instantly swap the Longbow. This is because if you swap the Longbow later on, look, I will roleplay right now, right? I will roleplay as the boss just phased. I'm doing a split phase now, I'm doing some damage. I don't swap the Longbow yet. I'm on Axe. For some reason, I'm standing on Axe, right? Now the boss comes back, right? The boss is back. Now I swap the Longbow. What the fuck am I gonna do? My weapon swap is on cooldown. I need to wait for the weapon swap to come off cooldown, and then I can do my burst, right? As if I swap the Longbow instantly when the boss is phased, I will have my weapon swap ready for whenever the burst is necessary, right? You want to start every boss phase on Longbow, ideally, right? That is your burst damage, that's the beginning of your phases, that's the beginning of the fight. That's what gives you the highest burst damage because of all of your skills combined together. And also gives you higher twice as vicious uptime. And yes, that is how you play the build in real fights. The odds are too difficult to deal with. If the odds are difficult to deal with, or they take a really, really long time to kill, you can do a full burst on the odds. You can do a full burst on the odds. You can like actually kill them by doing a full burst rotation. And then by the time the boss is back, you will be on Longbow naturally, right? You just gotta make sure that when the boss is back, you have been on Longbow for like at least 2 seconds already, pretty much, right? And that is how you play the build. Other random stuff that you can do, you can knock adds into the group with Longbow 4. If you're like, oh, this ad is very tanky, I'm not going to kill it by myself, but if I push it into the group, it will die instantly. Boom, you can do that. Longbow 5, it applies cripple. You can use this to cripple some ads. So you don't have to place Longbow 5 on the target. You can place Longbow 5 on the side of the target, like this. Like I placed it over here right now. It's still going to have the same hits on the target because it's an AoE. It looks like little projectiles that are falling all over the place, but it will always hit 12 times. No matter exactly where you are placing it, right? And you want to do this to cleave ads, but you don't want to do this if you don't want to cleave the ads. Example, I can make 2 examples in the game of this. One is on Soulless Horror. If you're playing Longbow on Druid to push, you don't want to use Longbow 5 on... There is an ad on the fight that you need to push out of the group, because if it explodes on the group, your boons are all corrupted and you all die, right? Now, if you cripple this enemy, it will make it harder for yourself to push the golem out of the arena and kill it outside of the arena. So in that situation, you don't want to cleave the ad. You want to place Longbow 5 as far away from the ad as possible. So you place it exactly on the opposite side of the boss, but it will still be hitting. Another example, Harvest Temple Challenge mode. On Salt Spray, you can place Longbow 5 on Salt Spray, but not on the orb on the side. If you do this, it will hit the orb on the side. If you do this, it will hit the orb on the side, right? You just place it like this, so that it only hits Salt Spray. Maybe one of the crabs as well, I think, is over here. You would take this bet if it's a fight that needs a little bit of extra CC. Because your group doesn't have enough. You just take Gazelle instead of Moa. And obviously you take it because of the F2 to do breakbar damage. The rotation is basically the same. Your F1, that's the only difference. Your F1 is now a damaging skill. It's a kick. Now, you want to use your F1 to do damage without ever interfering with the rest of your rotation. So, if you need to use Axe 2 right now, you're using Axe 2. If you need to use Axe 3 right now, you're using Axe 3. You need to do Axe 4, Axe 5, you're using Axe 4. You need to use F2, F3, you do F2, F3. You only use your F1 during auto-attacks. Yes, exactly. This is simply because it will fuck your cooldowns over. But it has an 8-second cooldown, so it's pretty short. You can actually use this quite often to just do extra damage. Or if you want to, you can also just use it once on Axe, and that's literally it. You kind of ignore the fact that it has an 8-second cooldown, you use it once per loop, and you call it a day. But yeah, the rotation stays the exact same. F2, however, remember, it is a movement skill. It locks you in place unless you use it like very, very close to the target. It still locks you in place if you use it very close to the target, but if you were to use it from far away, I'm locked in place the entire time. I mean, that's another thing I didn't talk about. Like, there is other variants of the build. You have the Warrun one, you have the Greatsword one. But this is the one that in a real encounter is going to be the best. I also forgot to explain something else earlier with Twice as Vicious. In some encounters, you can't proc the trait because the bosses have stability or they are immune to crowd control. You can actually still proc the trait with your F3 if you find the lightning field. You can leap into the lightning field with F3 and this will be a dazing strike. So it will actually proc the trait. I can give you one example, which is Whisper of Jormag. And yeah, also speaking of cooldowns, your heal skill, you are mostly not even going to be using it as a healing skill on this build. You are going to be using it to extend your boons a lot. You can take this trait to stance share not only the elite, You can also take this one so that obviously you get stability, but also the allies you're giving the stance with also get stability. So you like stab sharing, you can do might sharing, you can do boon sharing, you can do might sharing, give people poison or whatever. There's things that you can do. You can also take this the stance share to use the bear, which is another stance. It's on your healing skill, so that your allies also get the condition clans, right? Like there's also another thing you can do, which is in phases that I believe are shorter than 30 seconds. Or, well, if you're in an organized group where everybody is doing a lot of damage and, well, everybody's doing a lot of hits, rather. So let's say you're in the group of, your subgroup is made of Druid, 3 Bladesworns, and yourself. You don't want to take this. You're going to be sad. But if your subgroup has a lot of people that are attacking constantly, the phase is really short, you do want to take the straight, because it will actually be better. So in something like Fractals, where phases are really, really short, people are hitting a lot, really, really short boss phases. Yeah, that is one thing to keep in mind. The straight is really, really strong. Well, not as strong as it used to be, but it's still better than this one in really, really short burst phases. Yeah, the cooldown reduction might also get you like another cast in the fight, but that doesn't really happen often. So it's all good.